Nothing matters. Sit with it for a moment, here in the dark, instead of flinching away. Picture it plainly. 100 years from now, every person who knew your name will be gone. The house you worried over will belong to strangers who never wonder who lived there. The work you stayed late for, the things you got right, the things you can't forgive yourself for, all of it smoothed away, like a footprint on a beach when the tide comes in. Not punished, not mourned, just gone, quietly, as if none of it had ever been here at all. That thought can hurt. When it arrives at 3 in the morning, it can feel like the floor dropping out, like nothing you do means anything. So why do any of it at all? Most people spend their whole lives running from that feeling, staying busy, staying numb, filling every silence so it can't catch them. This is not going to be a trick that makes it pretty. The only way through it is to stand still, look straight at it, and follow it all the way down. Because something strange waits at the bottom of that thought. If nothing you do is written into the universe, no cosmic rulebook, no final scorecard, no judge keeping count, then yes, nothing you do is required. But notice the other half, the half we never let ourselves feel. Nothing you do is forbidden either. The same emptiness that erases the meaning erases the cage. And a person who truly understands that, who stops waiting for permission that was never coming, is freer than almost anyone alive. 2 people understood this better than anyone and built a whole way of living on it. Albert Camus looked at a man condemned to push a boulder up a hill forever, the very picture of a pointless life, and concluded of all things that we must imagine him happy. Friedrich Nietzsche asked a question that sounds like a curse and turns out to be a key. What if you had to live this exact life, every joy and every humiliation, again and again, forever? Could you learn to want it? They weren't playing word games. Each had walked all the way into the emptiness and found a way to live there, fully and even joyfully. And they left the path behind them, step by step. Tonight, we walk it with them. So let's begin. Before we go any further, you should meet the 2 who will guide us down, because they could hardly have been more different, and that is part of why, together, they are so hard to argue with. One was a Frenchman, Albert Camus, a playwright and novelist, a goalkeeper in his youth, sunburned and charming, raised in poverty in the bright coastal light of Algeria. He wrote with the clarity of someone who loved the physical world, the sea, the sun, the warmth of an ordinary afternoon, and who refused all his life to lie to himself just to feel better. The other was a German, Friedrich Nietzsche, who lived a half-century earlier, frail, half-blind, often alone, writing in rented rooms and mountain villages, almost entirely unread in his own lifetime. Where Camus is warm, Nietzsche is electric, a writer of thunderbolts and provocations, prophetic and strange. They never met, they never could have, but they were drawn, each in his own way, to the same edge, the place where the old certainties give out and the silence begins. And neither of them flinched. While most of philosophy was busy building careful arguments for why life still has meaning, these 2 walked the other direction, straight into the emptiness, to see what was actually there. What they found is the path we are going to follow. Camus will go first. He will teach us how to face a meaningless world without lying about it, and even to be happy in it. And then Nietzsche will take us further than Camus was willing to go, past acceptance, past endurance, all the way to something that looks impossibly like love. Two men, one descent. Let's take the first step with Camus and the idea that gave the whole problem its name. Camus gave the problem a name, and the name is the absurd. But he meant something very precise by it. Not just that life is strange, or random, or hard. The absurd for Camus is a collision. Two things meet that cannot be reconciled, and the absurd is the spark struck between them. The first thing is you. More exactly, the deep, restless hunger in you for meaning. We are creatures who cannot help asking why. We want our lives to add up to something. We want the suffering to be for a reason, the love to matter, the story to have a shape and a point. This longing is not a flaw or a weakness. It is one of the most human things about us. We reach constantly for a world that makes sense. And the second thing is the world itself, which meets that reaching with silence. You ask why, and nothing answers. Not the sky, not the stars, not time, not the universe. There is no note left for you, no purpose stamped on your life at birth, no cosmic plan unfolding behind the scenes that you can finally learn to read. You stand there with your whole heart full of the question, what is all this for? And the universe simply goes on, indifferent, wordless, as if you had not spoken at all. That gap between the question we cannot stop asking and the silence we cannot stop receiving, that is the absurd. It is not in you alone, and not in the world alone. It is the space between, the friction of the two rubbing together. And once you have truly felt it, you cannot unfeel it. Picture the smallest version of it. You are awake at 3 a.m, and the day's noise has finally gone quiet, and a question rises on its own. What is the point of any of this? And you wait. Some part of you actually waits for an answer to come, and none does. Just the hum of the dark, the faint sounds of the house, your own heartbeat. That waiting and that silence answering it is the absurd in miniature, visiting you in your own bed. Most of human history has been one long, magnificent effort to fill that silence with gods, with destinies, with grand stories that promise the universe is watching and the accounting will come. And perhaps one of those stories is true. Camus does not spend his time trying to disprove them. He simply notices, with great honesty, that here, now, in the silence of an ordinary night, we do not have the answer in hand. We have only the longing and the quiet. And he refuses to pretend otherwise. So Camus sets the real question, and notice that it is not the one we started with. The question is no longer, is the universe meaningful? He thinks that in our honest hours we already know no meaning is going to be handed to us from out there. The real question, the only one that turns out to matter, is this. Given that, how then do we live? If the silence is real and no rescue is coming, what does an honest person do with a single, unrepeatable life? There are, it turns out, only a few possible answers. Most of them are ways of cheating. Camus wanted to find the one that isn't. Faced with the absurd, with the silence where we wanted an answer, there are, Camus saw, 3 things a person can do. 2 of them are escapes. Only the third is honest. The first escape is the simplest and the darkest, and we will treat it gently, because it is not abstract for everyone. Faced with a life that seems to have no meaning, a person can conclude that such a life is not worth continuing at all. Camus took this possibility more seriously than almost any philosopher before him. He opened his great book by calling the question of whether life is worth living the one truly serious question there is. But having looked straight at it, he answered firmly, no. To end the story, because it has no given meaning, is to assume meaning was owed to you in the first place, and it throws away the one thing the absurd actually leaves in your hands, your life, and everything you might still do with it. Camus chose, emphatically, to go on. Not out of hope, out of defiance. And if that question is ever heavy for you in a real way, and not just a philosophical one, it is worth saying plainly. That is worth talking to someone about. Camus' whole answer, in the end, comes down on the side of living. The second escape is gentler, far more common, and almost invisible. Camus called it the leap. Faced with the silence, a person leaps over the gap into some answer that quiets the question. They decide the universe must have a plan after all, must be watching, must be keeping score. They take up a story that fills the silence so they never have to feel it again. Camus does not sneer at this. The longing behind it is the most human thing there is. But he calls it, carefully, a kind of philosophical suicide, a quiet killing of the honest question in exchange for comfort. The absurd asks you to hold the tension, the longing and the silence, both at once. The leap dissolves the tension by pretending one half of it isn't there. And then there is the third path, the only one that doesn't cheat. It is simply to stay, to hold the tension open, to keep wanting meaning, and to keep facing the silence, and to refuse to resolve the contradiction in either direction, neither giving up the longing nor pretending it has been answered. To live, awake, in the gap. Camus calls this keeping the absurd alive. It sounds, at first, like the hardest and bleakest of the three. It turns out to be the doorway to everything, to a freedom the other two can never reach. Because the moment you stop trying to escape the silence, something inside the silence changes. Here is where everything turns. Stay with it slowly, because it is the hinge the whole night swings on. We started with the thought that nothing matters, and we let it land as a loss, because that is how it always arrives first, as a subtraction, a robbery, the meaning drained out of the world. But look again at what that thought actually says, all the way to the bottom. If nothing you do is written into the universe, no cosmic rulebook, no final scorecard, no judge keeping count, then yes, it follows that nothing you do is required. There is no task you were sent here to complete, no purpose you are failing, no script you are obligated to follow. But now notice the other half. The half we almost never let ourselves feel because we are so busy mourning the first. If there is no cosmic rulebook, then nothing you do is required, and nothing you do is forbidden either. The same silence that refuses to hand you a purpose also refuses to hand you a prohibition. The same emptiness that erases the meaning erases the cage. Sit with how strange and how enormous that is. So much of a life is spent waiting for a permission that is never going to come, waiting to be allowed, to change, to leave, to begin, to want what you actually want, to stop performing the life you were handed and live the one that is yours. We carry around an invisible authority in our heads, a sense that someone, somewhere, has to sign off first. And the absurd delivers a piece of news that is terrifying for exactly 1 second and then breaks over you like fresh air. There is no one there. There never was. No final authority is watching, weighing, permitting, withholding. The seat is empty, and that means the permission you have been waiting for your whole life. You can simply give to yourself. This is the freedom hidden inside the emptiness, and it is a far wilder freedom than the comfortable kind. It is not the freedom of a life that has been guaranteed and approved. It is the freedom of a life that owes nothing and is owed nothing, that answers to no cosmic plan because there is none, and so becomes completely yours to make. The universe will not tell you what your life is for, which means no one gets to, which means you do. Now, this can be misheard, so let us be careful. To say that nothing is forbidden by the universe is not to say that nothing matters to you or to the people beside you. The absurd does not abolish love or kindness or the difference between cruelty and care. It only stops pretending those came stamped onto the world from outside. They come from us, from you. The meaning the universe will not provide. You are now free and responsible to create. That is the weight and the gift of it in the same hand. You are not playing a game whose rules were set in advance. You are holding the pen. And a person who truly grasps this, who stops waiting for permission that was never coming and picks up the pen, is freer than almost anyone alive. They have been let out of a cage they never knew they were in. The only question left is what you do with that freedom once it is yours. Camus had an answer. He called it revolt. Camus said that when you stop fleeing the absurd and stand inside it, awake, 3 things are given to you. He called them revolt, freedom, and passion, and together they are his whole picture of how to live. The first is revolt, not rebellion against a government or a person, something deeper and quieter. It is the refusal to look away. Revolt is what you are doing every time you face the silence honestly and keep going anyway. Neither killing the question nor pretending it has been answered, but holding it open, awake, and living fully in spite of it. It is Sisyphus walking back down to his stone with his eyes wide open. To revolt, in Camus' sense, is to be in a permanent confrontation with your own fate, to say, every day, I see that none of this is guaranteed, and I am here anyway, fully, and you will not make me look away. That defiance is not bitterness. It is a kind of integrity. It keeps you awake in your own life. The second gift is freedom, the one we just uncovered. The person who expected the universe to assign them a purpose was, without knowing it, a kind of employee, working toward a review that was never going to come. The absurd hands them their resignation. Once you no longer believe a fixed purpose is waiting to be discovered and obeyed, you are released into a freedom you never had before. The freedom of someone who finally understands that the shape of their life is genuinely open, genuinely theirs, and not not the dutiful unfolding of an assignment. And the third is passion. And this is the one people miss. You might expect that a man who looked this hard into the void would come back grey and cold. Camus came back the opposite. He concluded that since this life is the only one there is, and since no other, better world is coming to redeem it, then this one, this ordinary, sunlit, unrepeatable life, is unspeakably precious, not in spite of being all there is, because it is all there is. The absurd does not drain the world of value. It concentrates it. It tells you to stop waiting for the real life to begin somewhere else, and to live this one wide, to want it, taste it, feel it, the sea, the work, the faces you love, the warmth of an afternoon you will never get back. To live not the best, but the most. Revolt, freedom, passion. Face it, own it, feel it. That is Camus' answer to a silent universe, and the whole of it is gathered into one ancient image he could never stop returning to. A man, and a stone, and a hill. The Greeks told a story about a man named Sisyphus, and Camus built his whole philosophy around it. Sisyphus had angered the gods. He had loved life too much, cheated death, refused to go quietly into the dark, and so they devised for him a punishment perfectly shaped to break a soul. Not fire, not torture, something worse, because it was futile. They sentenced him to roll an enormous boulder up a mountain, and each time he reached the top, exhausted, the stone would roll back to the bottom, and he would walk down after it and begin again, forever. The same hill, the same stone, the same nothing at the end of it. It is, when you sit with it, the most exact image of a meaningless life anyone has ever drawn. Effort that leads nowhere. Labor with no lasting result. You may feel, some nights, that you know the hill yourself. The same tasks tomorrow that you finish today. The same small distance gained and lost and gained again, all of it heading in the end toward the same silence. Sisyphus is not a monster from a myth. He is us on the days we see clearly. And here is where almost everyone expects Camus to despair. The story seems to lead one way only, toward the conclusion that such a life is unbearable and the labor a curse. But Camus does something that, the first time you meet it, sounds almost mad. He turns to Sisyphus at the bottom of the hill, the stone resting, the long walk down ahead, and says, "This is where we must look. Not at the struggle up, at the pause, the moment he turns and walks back down to begin again. Because in that moment, Sisyphus knows. He is fully conscious of his fate. No illusion is left, no hope of the stone ever staying, no God to appeal to, no reward coming. He sees the whole absurd truth of his situation, and he goes down to the stone anyway. And that, Camus says, is exactly where he becomes free." Sit with why. As long as Sisyphus hoped, as long as he believed the stone might one day stay, that some rescue was coming, he belonged to the gods. His happiness depended on them. But the moment he gives up the hope and accepts the rock as his, completely, without bitterness and without illusion, the punishment loses its grip. They can sentence him to the hill. They cannot make him miserable on it. They cannot reach the place inside him where he has decided freely that this struggle is his and that he will meet it with his eyes open. The stone is the god's. The walk down, the lucidity, the quiet refusal to be crushed is entirely his. This is the heart of it. The absurd life is not made bearable by pretending it has a hidden meaning. It is made bearable, more than bearable, by facing that it doesn't, and living it fully anyway. The boulder does not need to reach the top for the effort to matter. The struggle itself, the strength of the body, the lucid mind that refuses to look away. Camus said that alone is enough to fill a heart. And so he ends with the line that turns the whole story inside out. After everything, the futility, the eternity of it, the stone that will never stay, one must imagine Sisyphus happy. Not happy because he won. He will never win. Happy because he stopped needing to. He took a life with no meaning poured into it from above and filled it himself from below, with attention, with effort, with a fierce and clear-eyed yes. And when you lie there, feeling the weight of your own hill, Camus is asking you to consider that the freedom you are looking for was never going to come from the boulder finally staying put. It was always waiting in the walk back down, in meeting your life exactly as it is, and refusing to be made miserable by it. And Camus did not reason his way to this from a safe and comfortable study. He had lived the absurd himself from the inside, all the way to the end. It would be easy to mistake all of this for the work of a comfortable man, someone who could afford to be philosophical about suffering because he had not met much of it. Camus was the opposite. He earned every word from the inside. He was born poor in Algeria in 1913, into a family that had almost nothing. His father was killed in the First World War when Albert was an infant. He was raised by his mother, who was partly deaf and could barely read, in a cramped apartment with no books and no easy comfort. And yet he fell in love early with the sea, the sun, the bright physical beauty of the Algerian coast, a love of the simple world that never left his writing. Then, at 17, he began coughing blood. Tuberculosis. In those years it was often a death sentence, and it ended his dream of an ordinary life and an athlete's body almost before it had begun. From then on he lived with death sitting visibly at the table, which is perhaps why he could never bring himself to waste a single ordinary day. When the Second World War came and the Germans occupied France, Camus did not retreat into theory. He joined the resistance. He edited an underground newspaper, writing and printing words that, if discovered, would have cost him his life, in a city where every small choice carried real and immediate weight. He had written that life has no given meaning, and then he lived through a time and place that demanded he decide daily what he would risk that meaningless life for. His philosophy was never an abstraction. It was forged where the stakes were absolute. He went on to write the books that made him famous and to win the Nobel Prize at 44, one of the youngest ever to receive it. And then, in 1960, at the age of 46, in the middle of a full and vivid life, he was killed instantly in a car crash on a country road. In his coat pocket was an unused train ticket. He had meant to take the train and changed his mind and gone by car instead. The philosopher of the absurd, of a universe that takes life without reason and without warning, met exactly that kind of death. There is no lesson in it. That is the point. It was simply, perfectly absurd, to the very end. Camus took a meaningless world and refused to let it make him bitter. He lived it wide, loved it hard, and revolted against its silence by filling his days with as much life as they could hold. That is already a complete and beautiful answer. But it has a ceiling. Camus teaches us to bear the absurd, to stay awake inside it, even to be happy. He stops at acceptance. And decades before Camus was ever born, another man had stood at the same edge and found acceptance nowhere near enough. He did not want only to endure a meaningless world. He wanted to know whether a human being could learn to stand in it and say yes, could come somehow to love the whole terrible, beautiful thing. His name was Friedrich Nietzsche, and he is where we go next. Nietzsche is the man who said the most famous and most misunderstood 3 words in modern philosophy. God is dead. People hear that as a boast or an insult, a triumphant little slogan. It is neither. When Nietzsche wrote it, he did not write it in triumph. He put the words in the mouth of a madman who runs into a marketplace at dawn with a lantern, looking for God, and cries out to the indifferent crowd that we have killed him, we, all of us, and then asks, in something close to terror, how shall we comfort ourselves? What was holiest and mightiest in the world has bled to death under our knives. Who will wipe this blood off us? It is not a celebration. It is a man feeling the ground go out from under an entire civilization. What Nietzsche meant was a diagnosis, not a taunt. He was saying that the great central source from which the Western world had drawn its meaning for 2,000 years, the sense of a divine order, a cosmic purpose, a final accounting that made everything add up, had quietly stopped being believable at the core for more and more people, not argued away, just somehow no longer felt as real. And most people, he thought, had not yet noticed what they had lost. They still had the morals, the comforts, the habits, but the foundation underneath them had gone hollow. The light from a star that has already died still travels for ages before the sky goes dark. Nietzsche was the man who looked up and said, "That star is already out. You are living by its afterglow." This is the same silence Camus would later name the absurd, the same empty seat where a final authority used to sit. But Nietzsche felt its danger more sharply than almost anyone, because he saw that when the old meaning dies, it leaves a vacuum, and a vacuum does not stay empty. Something rushes in. The question that would haunt him, the question he thought would decide the next 2 centuries, was what? What rushes in to fill the space where meaning used to be? Get it wrong, and the death of the old certainty becomes a catastrophe. Get it right, and it becomes the greatest opening in human history. He wrote a line that has never stopped echoing. If you gaze long into an abyss, the abyss gazes also into you. He was not warning us away from the edge. He had been to the edge and lived there. He was telling us what it costs to look and what it asks of us once we have. Because there is a wrong way to live after the death of meaning, and Nietzsche feared it more than he feared despair. He gave it a face and a name and a quiet, terrible little portrait. He called it the last man. When the old meaning dies, Nietzsche thought, there are 2 directions a person can go: up into the hard, exhilarating work of creating new meaning, or down into something he found more chilling than any despair. He called the figure at the bottom the last man. The last man is not a villain. That is what makes him so unsettling. He is comfortable. He is reasonable. He has, in a sense, given up, but so gently, so sensibly, that he would never use the word. Faced with a universe that offers no grand purpose, the last man simply stops reaching for one. He lowers his eyes from anything high or difficult or dangerous and arranges his whole life around a single quiet goal: to be comfortable and to avoid all pain. He has his little pleasure for the day and his little pleasure for the night. He keeps warm. He takes no risks. He wants nothing that might cost him anything. He has, Nietzsche says with a shiver, invented happiness, and blinks. You can feel how close to home this lands 2 centuries later. The last man is the part of all of us that, faced with the bigness and the emptiness of existence, would simply rather be soothed. That reaches in every silence for the screen, the scroll, the next episode, the small, steady drip of comfort that asks nothing and risks nothing and slowly, painlessly empties the days of everything that might have made them ache or matter. The last man does not rage against meaninglessness. He doesn't feel it sharply enough to rage. He just gets comfortable and a little number each year and lets the one life he has slide quietly past, warm, untroubled, and unlived. And here is why Nietzsche put this portrait exactly where he did, because it names the real danger, the one most people walk into without ever noticing. When we imagine a meaningless world destroying someone, we picture despair, collapse, dramatic ruin. Nietzsche says no. The real loss is quieter than that and far more common. It is not the person broken by the void. It is the person who shrugs at it and reaches for the remote. Despair, at least, still cares. The last man has stopped caring and called it peace. So Nietzsche draws a line in the sand, and it is the line this whole second half of our journey is about. The death of meaning gives you a choice, and only one of the 2 roads leads anywhere alive. You can take the absurd as permission to stop reaching, to sink into comfort and let the days blur into one another. Or you can take it as the greatest dare ever offered to a human being, that since no meaning will be handed to you, you might become someone who can make it. Nietzsche spent his life trying to show what that second road looks like, and it begins with a frightening, thrilling idea that you, yourself, can become the source. If no meaning is handed down to you from above, no table of values carved in cosmic stone, then where could meaning possibly come from? Nietzsche's answer is the boldest thing in all his work, and the most demanding. It has to come from you. You stop being a creature who receives values and become a creature who creates them. He had a phrase for the lifelong labor of this: self-overcoming. We tend to think of ourselves as fixed things. This is just who I am. These are simply my limits. This is the hand I was dealt. Nietzsche saw a human being differently, not as a finished statue, but as both the sculptor and the stone. You are the one thing in the universe that can take itself in hand and shape what it becomes, that can look at its own fears and habits and resentments and comforts and decide to overcome them and forge from that raw material something stronger and freer and more its own. Every value you live by, he said, you can either inherit unexamined, like furniture you never chose, or you can test it, break the ones that shrink you, and forge the ones that make you larger. To create your own values is the hardest work there is. It is also, he thought, the only work that makes you truly free. This is what he meant by that strange, ringing command. Become who you are. It sounds like a contradiction. How can you become what you already are? But he meant something precise and beautiful. Buried in you, under the borrowed opinions and the inherited fears and the life you fell into by default, there is a particular person you have it in you to be, your own, unrepeated, fully alive. Most people never meet that person. They live the values handed to them, want what they were told to want, and carry the unlived self with them to the grave. To become who you are is to do the patient, courageous, lifelong work of digging that self out, of clearing away everything you merely absorbed until what is left is actually yours. And notice, this is the exact opposite of the last man. The last man handed a universe with no built-in purpose, sighs in relief, and stops reaching. Nietzsche handed the very same universe, feels something closer to vertigo and exhilaration. If nothing is fixed, then everything is possible. Then a human being is not a finished fact, but an open question, a piece of unworked marble that gets to decide what it will become. The death of the old meaning is not the end of the story. It is the terrifying, magnificent beginning of a new one in which, for the first time, the meaning of a human life is placed into human hands, into yours. But Nietzsche knew something about this that the cheerful, modern version of it always forgets. Creating yourself is not a sunny project of becoming your best self. It means facing and somehow making peace with everything you are and everything you have lived, including the parts you would give anything to erase, the wounds, the failures, the pain you did nothing to deserve. You cannot become who you are while at war with half of your own life. And so Nietzsche arrived, at last, at the strangest and most beautiful of all his ideas, a stance toward your own existence so total that it could embrace even the worst of it and call the whole thing good. He found his way to it through more suffering than almost any of us will ever know. And to understand what he meant, you have to know what it cost him. It would be a kind of insult to talk about Nietzsche's idea of loving your fate without telling you what his own fate actually was, because no one ever taught a harder doctrine from a harder life. He was brilliant young, a professor of classics at just 24, a prodigy with a golden future. And then his health collapsed and never came back. For most of his adult life, he was profoundly ill, blinding migraines that could lay him out for days at a time, eyes so weak he could barely read or write, a stomach in near constant revolt. He gave up the professorship. He became a wanderer, drifting between cheap rooms in the mountains of Switzerland and Italy and the south of France, chasing a climate that might let him think, living out of a single suitcase, mostly alone. And he was alone. That is the part that aches. Friendships fell away, or curdled. The one woman he loved refused him. He never married, never had a circle, never had the warmth of being understood in his own time. He wrote book after book, the books we now consider among the greatest in the language, and almost no one read them. Some he had to pay to print himself. He would pour a masterpiece into the world and sell a few dozen copies. He gave the whole of his genius to the silence and got back, for most of his life, almost nothing. He once said his thoughts were like a fire in his veins, and that he had no one to share the warmth with, And then, at the very start of 1889, in the Italian city of Turin, it ended. The story that has come down, and it is so fitting that it hardly matters whether every detail is exact, is that Nietzsche stepped into a public square and saw a coachman beating a horse, and something in him broke open. He is said to have rushed forward and thrown his arms around the animal's neck to shield it, weeping, and then he collapsed. He never recovered his mind. He spent his last 11 years in the care of his mother and then his sister, his great work behind him, mostly silent, the brilliant light gone soft and dim. He died in 1900, just as the new century he had foreseen so much about was beginning. Now hold all of that next to the thing he taught. This is the man, sick, half-blind, unread, unloved, and finally broken, who looked at human existence and arrived not at bitterness and not at the easy comfort of the last man, but at the most life-affirming idea in the history of philosophy. He did not teach us to love our fate from a place of ease, having been spared the worst. He taught it from inside a life that gave him almost every reason to curse his own. That is what lifts it above a slogan. When Nietzsche says you might learn to say yes to all of it, the pain included, he is not speaking from the shallows. He is speaking from the very bottom. And it is from down there that he reaches up toward the idea he called his formula for human greatness. Amor Fati, the love of fate. Amor Fati. It is Latin, and it means simply the love of one's fate. Nietzsche called it his formula for greatness in a human being, that one wants nothing to be other than it is, not forward, not backward, not in all eternity. Not merely to bear what is necessary, he wrote, and still less to hide it, but to love it. Sit with how steep that is, because it is easy to soften it into something it is not. Amor Fati is not positive thinking. It is not pretending the bad things were secretly good, or that everything happens for a reason, or that it all worked out for the best in the end. Nietzsche had no patience for that kind of consolation. It is just the leap again, the quiet lie that makes the silence bearable by pretending it isn't there. Amor Fati asks for something far harder and far more honest. It asks you to look at your actual life, the real one, with the grief in it, the failures, the wounds you did not deserve and would give anything to undo, and to say yes to it. The whole of it, without editing, without the comforting story. Yes, even this. Why would anyone want to? Here is the heart of it. Your life is not a collection of separate events, some good and some bad, that could be sorted so the bad ones are thrown away. It is one single, seamless thing, every part knotted into every other. The person you are right now, the one who can understand these words, who has loved what you have loved and survived what you have survived, was made by all of it, the joy and the catastrophe alike, woven together past any untangling. To wish away the worst day of your life is to wish away the person it made you into. To reject one thread is to begin pulling the whole cloth apart. Amor Fati is the recognition that if you are going to say yes to your life at all, to who you have actually become, you have to say yes to the whole of what made you. There is no partial yes. There is only the full one, or the long, tired war against your own existence. And something remarkable happens to a person who manages it, even in flashes, even imperfectly, because no one holds it perfectly. The war ends. So much of our suffering is not the thing itself, but the endless inner protest against it. The this should not have happened, the rerunning of the past, the bargaining with a reality that has already closed. Amor Fati lays that weapon down. It does not turn the pain into pleasure. It turns the pain into yours, fully claimed, woven in, no longer a grievance held against the universe, but a part of the one life you have decided to love anyway. And a person who can do that has reached something the indifferent universe could never give them and can never take away. They have stopped needing their life to have been different in order to love the life they have. This is as far as acceptance can possibly go, past mere endurance, past peace, all the way to a kind of fierce gratitude for the whole. And Nietzsche, never satisfied, pushed it one step further still, into a single thought experiment so demanding that it gathers up everything we have said tonight into one question and hands it to you, in the dark, to answer. Near the heart of everything Nietzsche wrote, there is a thought he considered the heaviest a person could carry. He called it the eternal recurrence, and he first set it down not as a theory, but as a scene. A small, terrifying story. So let it come to you the way he meant it to. Imagine that late one night, in your loneliest hour, a demon slips into the room, and the demon says, "This life, exactly as you have lived it and are living it now, you will have to live once more, and countless times more. And there will be nothing new in it. Every pain and every joy, every thought and every sigh, everything unspeakably small and unspeakably great, all of it returning in the same order. This same night, this same demon, the same dust on the same windowsill. Again and again and again, forever." Now the demon asks you one question. Would you throw yourself down and curse him for saying it? Or have you ever known a moment so vast, so full, that you would answer, "Yes, yes, I want it again, all of it, exactly so"? That is the whole thought. And notice first that Nietzsche is not really making a claim about time. He is not asking you to believe the universe literally repeats. He is handing you a test, perhaps the most demanding ever devised for a human life, because your answer to the demon tells you, instantly and without mercy, how you stand toward your own existence. If the thought of living your life again, unchanged, fills you with horror, then somewhere you are living against your life, enduring it, waiting for it to be over or to become something else. But if you could meet the demon and say yes, then you have done something almost no one does. You have made peace with everything, not just the good hours, all of it. This is why he thought it was the heaviest weight. Most ways of making life bearable work by subtraction, by editing. We tell ourselves the story with the painful parts cut out, or redeemed, or explained away as steps towards something better. The recurrence allows none of that. It puts the whole of your life back in front of you, every humiliation and grief and wasted year included, and asks you not to tolerate it, but to want it, to love it so completely that you would sign for every second again, with nothing removed. And here is the strange gift hidden inside the heaviest weight. The recurrence is also a way of living, maybe the most demanding and most beautiful one Nietzsche ever offered. It asks you to live, from this moment on, so that you could say yes, to spend your hours as if each one were going to return forever, so that you would will it back. Imagine meeting each thing you do tonight with that question quietly behind it. Would I want this again, eternally? It is not a way of escaping your life into a better one. It is the opposite, a way of pressing yourself so fully into this life, the only one there is, that you would take it back, whole, an infinite number of times. You can feel how far this is from where we began. We started with the cold thought that nothing matters, that 100 years from now every trace of you will be gone. Nietzsche takes that same impermanent, unrepeatable life, and instead of mourning that it vanishes, he asks you to love it so fiercely that you would have it never stop returning. The meaninglessness does not change. The universe still owes you nothing, still keeps no score, still forgets you entirely. But the person who can stand in that indifferent universe and say yes to their own life, yes, again, all of it, forever, has found something the gods could not give and cannot take. They have stopped needing the universe to mean anything, because they have learned at last to mean it themselves. That is the summit Nietzsche was climbing toward all along. Not the grim endurance of a pointless life, not even peace with it. Something closer to gratitude, a love so total that it could embrace even the emptiness, even the repetition, even the silence, and call the whole of it good. So bring the two of them back together now. Camus and Nietzsche, the Frenchman and the German, the one who taught us to revolt and the one who taught us to say yes. Because at the end of their very different roads, they arrive in nearly the same place. And it is a place you can actually live. Strip away the systems and the famous phrases, and here is what they are both telling you. The universe is not going to give your life meaning. Stop waiting for it to. No purpose is coming in the mail. No final accounting will arrive to tell you it was all worth it. And that is not the disaster it first appears to be, because it hands you, in the very same motion, a life that owes nothing to anyone and is owed nothing in return. A life that is entirely, finally, yours to fill. And what does filling it actually look like? On an ordinary Tuesday, it looks like doing things for their own sake, rather than for a cosmic reward that was never coming anyway. Loving people without any guarantee that it will last or be returned. Loving them because the loving itself is the point, not because the universe is keeping a ledger. Pouring yourself into work or a craft or a person or a single morning, not because it will echo in eternity. It won't, but because it is here, and you are here. And that is enough. It looks like presence, the radical, difficult act of actually being inside the one life you have, instead of forever postponing it until the meaning finally shows up. Because the meaning is not going to show up. You are the meaning showing up. There is a lightness in this that you cannot get any other way. The person still waiting for the universe to validate them is carrying an invisible weight. The constant, low question of whether they are doing it right, whether it counts, whether it will all add up in the end. Camus and Nietzsche set that weight down. There is no right. There is no final tally. There is no one to validate you, which means there is no one whose approval you are failing to earn. There is just this day, this breath, this person in front of you, this stone, this hill, this single unrepeatable life, and the freedom to meet it fully, and the quiet astonishment that it is happening at all. A meaningless universe sounds at first like the coldest possible news, and then you live your way into it and discover the secret the two of them spent their lives trying to tell you, that the same emptiness that takes away the cosmic meaning gives back the world. Every ordinary thing, no longer a step towards some final purpose, becomes precious for exactly what it is. The afternoon light, the cup of coffee going cold in your hands, the face of someone you love, here, now, briefly, against all the odds of an indifferent cosmos. None of it matters in the end. And so all of it, every fleeting, unrepeatable second of it, matters now, more than you ever let yourself feel, which is the whole of what they were trying to give you. And it is almost time now to set it down and rest. So let it all grow quiet now. We have walked a long way down into the dark, and all the way back up, and there is nothing left to figure out tonight. There is only this, and rest. Notice, if you can, how light it is on this side of the thought that frightened us at the start. We began with nothing matters, and it landed like a stone on the chest, and we followed it all the way down, and found at the bottom not a pit, but an opening, the strange, wide freedom of a life that owes nothing and is owed nothing. The same emptiness that erases the meaning erases the weight. And tonight, you are allowed to feel that. Not as an idea now, as a softness in the body, as permission to set everything down. Because think of what you do not have to carry here in the dark. You do not have to figure out the point of it all. There isn't one waiting to be found. The search is over, and that is its own kind of peace. You do not have to earn your existence, or justify the day, or prove that your life is adding up to something. No one is keeping score. No one is waiting for the report. The universe asks nothing of you tonight, not a single thing. And for these few hours, neither does anyone else, and neither do you. You can simply be here, a warm and breathing thing in an indifferent and beautiful cosmos, for no reason at all, and let that be more than enough. Sisyphus has set his stone down at the bottom of the hill, and he is resting, and he is, impossibly, against everything, content. Nietzsche's hardest yes has gone quiet, and softened into something that feels almost like gratitude. And you who carried the weight of meaning all day, the way we all do, the wondering whether it counts, whether you are doing it right, whether any of it will last, you can put that down too. It will be there in the morning, if you want it. The hill will be there. The stone will be there. But not now. Now there is only the dark, and your breath, and the quiet, and nothing at all, that you are required to do. Let the day go the way the light goes at the end of it, without protest, without needing it to have meant anything, simply finished, and fine, and enough. There was a freedom hiding inside the emptiness all along, and it feels, in the end, like this. Like rest. Like being allowed, at last, to stop. So let everything we followed tonight settle into something you can carry with you. We started with the coldest thought there is, that in the end, nothing. That 100 years from now, every trace of you will be smoothed away like a footprint when the tide comes in, unmourned, unpunished, simply gone. and we did not flinch from it, and we did not dress it up. We let it be true, because it is. But we followed it all the way to the bottom, with two of the bravest guides who ever made the descent, and we found that the thought has another face. The same emptiness that erases everything is the emptiness that sets you free. If nothing is required of you, then nothing is forbidden you. If no meaning is given, then meaning is yours to make. Camus taught us to face the silence and revolt, to live wide and lucid and unbroken in a world that promises nothing. Nietzsche took us further and taught us to say yes, to love a life so completely, the pain and all, that we would live it again, unchanged, forever. And in the end, the two of them hand you the very same quiet gift, because none of it lasts, all of it, every ordinary, fleeting, unrepeatable moment of it is precious now. The cold coffee, the afternoon light, the face across the table, the breath you are taking in the dark, right now, as you listen. In the end, nothing. And so, here, tonight, everything, for exactly as long as it lasts. That was never a curse. It was the freedom, hiding in the emptiness, the whole time. Rest now. You don't have to carry it tonight. If this stayed with you, the feeling it speaks to isn't one you resolve once and never meet again. The silence comes back. The weight comes back. Learning to meet it, to hear the freedom inside the emptiness instead of only the dread, is the quiet work of a whole life. Camus and Nietzsche never claimed otherwise. If you'd like to go further, their books are worth the time. From Camus, The Myth of Sisyphus, where Sisyphus walks back down his hill, and The Rebel. From Nietzsche, The Gay Science, where the demon first whispers of the eternal return. Thus spoke Zarathustra, strange and beautiful, and Ecce Homo, where he writes of loving his fate. They are not always easy, but few writers have ever been more honest about how it actually feels to stand in a meaningless world and decide to live anyway. One last thought to rest on. You will not get the universe to tell you what your life is for. No one ever has. But that silence you keep waiting to have filled was never empty in the way you feared. It was open. It was room. It was the space where a free life goes. And what you fill it with, in the end, is entirely and only and beautifully up to you. Sleep well. In the end, nothing. And so tonight, rest until next time.